Hello, fellow screen-staring legend. What mysterious land are you watching from? A peaceful village or an urban caffeine-fueled battlefield? Drop your location below like it's classified intel, and do share this video before your phone battery rebels. Onward. The most devastating day of my life began without warning, cloaked in the quiet calm of a typical Utah morning. At 5:30 a.m., the first soft glow of dawn slipped past the curtains, faint and pale against the lingering darkness. Beyond the glass, the jagged silhouettes of the Wasatch Mountains stood stark against a sky slowly yielding to morning light. I slid carefully out of bed, mindful not to wake Erin. She lay curled on her side, her blonde hair spilling across the pillow like scattered rays of sunlight. For a long moment, I stood there, simply watching the steady rise and fall of her breathing. God, I love this woman, I thought, a familiar warmth flooding through me. Even after 10 years of marriage, the sight of her sleeping still unraveled me in ways I couldn't explain. Determined to make the most of my Saturday, I pulled on my running shoes and stepped outside into the stillness. The streets of Draper were hushed, blanketed by the crisp edge of late summer giving way to fall, the air rich with the scent of damp grass. I started at an easy jog, my breath puffing small clouds in the cool air, the rhythmic slap of my sneakers the only sound in the sleepy neighborhood. Running had always been my escape, my ritual to clear the noise in my head. 35 was fast approaching, and though I felt age creeping into my knees, I was proud to keep myself in shape. 3 miles later, sweat clinging to my temples, I slowed beneath trees already tinged with gold, the season shifting before my eyes. The horizon blazed orange in the east, hinting at a perfect day ahead. By the time I returned home, the house was alive with morning energy. From the open garage, I caught the clatter of dishes and the excited chatter of 2 familiar voices. Grinning, I grabbed a towel from the bench and stepped inside. The air was thick with the aroma of fresh coffee mingling with the sweet scent of waffle batter, our unspoken Saturday tradition. "Morning, Dad." Blake, 9 years old and obsessed with Minecraft, sat perched at the kitchen counter in his favorite t-shirt, syrup glistening on his chin, evidence of stolen bites. Beside him, Chloe waved a fork in the air with uncontained enthusiasm. At 7, she was pure chaos wrapped in mismatched socks and a mess of brown curls that looked like they'd been at war with her pillow. "Morning, troublemakers," I teased, catching Chloe's sticky hand mid-wave and giving it a playful squeeze. "Your mom roped you into waffle duty, huh?" Blake grinned proudly. "I get to pour the batter." He nodded toward the waffle iron steaming quietly on the counter. Erin appeared from behind the kitchen island, balancing 2 steaming mugs and holding out a smoothie with her free hand. She wore her favorite blue robe, her hair gathered into a messy bun that somehow made her even more beautiful. At 33, she'd traded carefree recklessness for a grounded confidence I loved even more deeply. "Strawberry banana, extra protein," she said, voice warm and teasing. "Figured you'd want this after your run." Leaning across the counter, I kissed her cheek, catching the faint vanilla lavender scent of her lotion. "You know me too well," I murmured, taking the smoothie and savoring the first sweet, cold sip. She gave me a mock-stern look over the rim of her coffee mug. "Keep up those sunrise runs, Elias, and I might actually convince you to sign up for a marathon." I chuckled. "Let's not get crazy. I can handle a few quiet miles at dawn, 26 miles with a crowd cheering. That might kill me." Chloe giggled, flexing her tiny arm. "Daddy, you're strong. You're not gonna die." "That's right," Erin said with a playful wink, ruffling Chloe's hair. "Your dad's the strongest guy we know." Her gaze lingered on mine, steady, soft, and full of love. Moments like this, with Erin laughing and the kids happy and sticky-fingered, always felt like winning the lottery. I had a job I was proud of as an aerospace engineer for a local defense company, a comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, and a family I'd lay down my life for. On the surface, everything was perfect. We sat around the table together, devouring waffles drowned in maple syrup and sprinkled with fresh berries. Blake rattled off details about his upcoming soccer practice, while Chloe chattered about a playdate with the neighbor's daughter later that afternoon. I tossed in suggestions here and there while Aaron listened with that soft smile that never failed to warm me, reminding them to clean their rooms before running off to play. It was everyday chaos, but it was the kind I cherished most. Once breakfast was finished and the dishes were stacked in the sink, I checked the clock. I'd promised my best friend, Aaron Price, that I'd swing by his place that morning to help set up for the barbecue we were co-hosting later in the day. Aaron and I went back to college, brothers in everything but blood, and over the years our families had blended seamlessly. He was Uncle Aaron to my kids, and his wife Sophie had become one of Aaron's closest friends. We always joked that our friendship came as a package deal, and thankfully our wives loved each other just as much. "I'm gonna shower and head to Aaron's," I said, setting my empty plate in the sink. "You okay wrangling soccer practice and Chloe's play date?" Aaron waved me off with an easy smile. "Go, we've got it handled. Sophie and I are taking the kids to the park afterward anyway." "Catch you guys at the cookout around noon," I called, jingling my keys as I headed for the door. She slipped out from behind the kitchen island, her hands automatically reaching for the collar of my shirt. It was an unconscious gesture, something she did often, a quiet ritual that always felt like home. "Don't forget to grab the drinks on your way, okay?" I shot her an exaggerated salute. "Aye, aye, Captain, I'm on it." Her fingertips lingered against my chest a moment longer, brushing over fabric as if smoothing out some invisible crease. That fleeting touch sent a light, almost electric shiver through me. "Okay," she murmured, locking eyes with mine. "Have fun with your boyfriend," she added with a teasing smirk. I rolled my eyes, leaning into the joke. "You jealous?" "Not in the slightest," she replied with a laugh, giving my shoulder a playful pat. "Just don't let him rope you into anything stupid. You two always come up with the worst ideas together." Laughing, I started toward the stairs. "Relax, we're practically saints. I'll be home before you know it." Under the shower spray, my thoughts wandered through the checklist for the day. There was a lot to juggle lately, but I couldn't complain. Life was good. We'd found a groove, steady jobs, close-knit friends, dinners with family every Sunday. The Parkers were right in the middle of that circle, Aaron especially. Quick with a joke, fiercely loyal, our friendship felt inevitable, like two puzzle pieces that had always belonged together. Sometimes I wondered how I'd gotten so lucky. If you'd told me that before the sun set, every bit of that stability would come crashing down, I would have laughed. That morning felt untouchable, golden and safe. Betrayal wasn't even a distant possibility. I tugged on a pair of jeans and a polo, then peeked into Chloe's room before heading out. Aaron sat cross-legged on the carpet, carefully braiding our daughter's hair for soccer practice. They were giggling about ribbon colors, their heads bent close in that little world they built together. The sight made something warm settle in my chest. "See you later, girls," I said from the doorway. Chloe grinned, waving absently as Aaron blew me a quick kiss, still working the braid with deft fingers. Stepping into the driveway, I paused. The sunlight spilled over the Wasatch Mountains, painting the valley in soft gold, and gratitude washed over me so strongly it almost hurt. I climbed into my pride and joy, a midnight blue Ford F-150 I'd splurged on the year before. Sure, it was a stereotypical Utah dad truck, but I adored it. The engine purred to life as I backed out. Friends, family, good food. Life felt simple in the best way. I couldn't have known this ordinary Saturday morning would be the last time it ever did. Chapter 2. The Turning Point. By the time afternoon rolled in, the Parkers' backyard was alive with noise and energy. The barbecue had hit its stride. Kids darted through the grass in wild games of tag, burgers sizzled on the grill, and laughter mingled with the scent of charcoal in the warm air. Aaron and Sophie's place in Sandy was perfect for days like this, spacious, shaded by a sprawling oak tree, the mountains standing like silent sentinels beyond the fence line. Around 3, the sun was high enough to send us retreating under the striped awning for relief. I dropped into a chair beside Aaron, finishing off a helping of Sophie's famous potato salad. He was halfway through recounting a disaster at work, a nightmare client, a botched ad campaign. Aaron had a knack for spinning even the worst situations into entertaining stories. His job at the marketing firm seemed to hand him new material every week. I laughed when I should have, but my attention kept drifting toward the tree line. Aaron was over there with Sophie, the two of them leaning close, hands moving animatedly as they talked. Aaron's face was bright, her smile wide. It always struck me how natural their bond was, more like sisters than friends. And Aaron? He was the closest thing I'd ever had to a brother. He must have caught me zoning out because he clapped a hand on my shoulder with a grin. "Hey, you still with me? My stories aren't that boring." I smirked. "Sorry, just trying to figure out what those two are scheming about." I nodded toward them. "Looks like they're planning world domination or something." Aaron followed my gaze. Sophie was laughing now while Aaron pantomimed zipping her lips. "God help us," he groaned. "Last time they got like this, we ended up building the entire set for the school play. I was vacuuming glitter out of my car for months." I chuckled. "Yeah, but you gotta admit, the kids love those sparkly trees." "Fair," he said with a grin. "Could be worse. At least they don't hate each other. They just team up against us instead." "We're lucky," I said, and I meant it. I raised my beer in a quiet salute and flashed Aaron a grin. "To best friends and the ones who put up with us." He clinked his bottle against mine with an amused snort. "I'll drink to that." The last light of the day melted into the horizon, streaks of peach and rose stretching across the fading sky. The yard, once alive with chatter and bursts of laughter, softened into a gentle hush as crickets began their nightly chorus. Chloe tugged at my sleeve, her tiny face crumpled with exhaustion. "Daddy, sleepy," she mumbled, rubbing at her eyes with balled fists. I scooped her up, feeling the heavy warmth of her little body sink against my chest. "Big day, huh? Ready to head home?" She nodded wordlessly, her head finding my shoulder almost before I finished speaking. A moment later, Blake bounded toward us, knees streaked with grass stains, hair a wild mess, dirt smudged across his cheeks. The Price's dog must have kept him busy all afternoon. Erin appeared at my side, her cheeks still pink from laughter and sunshine. "These two are about to crash," she said softly. "We should get them home before they melt down." Farewells followed, hugs all around, promises of another get-together soon. Aaron and Sophie lingered in their embrace, murmuring about lunch plans later in the week. Aaron thumped me on the back with a one-armed hug. "Drive safe," he said. "Let's set up that fishing trip we keep talking about." "Count me in," I replied with a grin. "Maybe next month when the leaves start to turn." He nodded, smirking. "I'll hold you to it." By the time we eased out of the Price subdivision, both kids were slumped against their seatbelts, fast asleep. The drive was peaceful, twilight draping the valley as distant city lights flickered awake. Erin rested her hand lightly on my arm as I steered through the quiet roads. "Thanks for helping Aaron earlier," she murmured. "He really appreciated it." I glanced her way, smiling. "Anytime. He's done the same for me. Honestly, I think he just wanted an excuse to hang out. We ended up playing video games with the kids half the morning." Her soft laugh filled the car. "Figures. Sophie keeps teasing that we should just combine households at this point." "Tempting," I joked. "You two could handle the hard stuff while Aaron and I sneak off to watch football." She pinched my arm with mock indignation. "Not a chance." We drifted into a comfortable silence, the hum of tires on asphalt blending with the faint snores from the back seat. A pleasant heaviness settled over me, sunlight, good food, and easy company leaving me quietly content. Once home, I carried Chloe to her bed while Aaron coaxed a half-asleep Blake down the hall. We tucked them in, their faces soft with dreams, skin still faintly warm and grass-scented from the long day outdoors. Downstairs, the house felt unusually still. Erin stretched her arms overhead and sighed. "I need a shower. I smell like bonfire and sunscreen." "I'll clean up down here," I offered, though the place was mostly in order after a day away. She paused halfway up the stairs, leaning in to press a quick kiss to my lips, sweet, fleeting and faintly tasting of lemonade. "Love you," she whispered. "Love you too," I murmured, watching her disappear around the corner. In the living room, I gathered the stray toys and half-empty juice boxes left from the morning's chaos. My eyes caught on the family photo perched on the mantel. Last Christmas, the four of us in ridiculous matching sweaters. Aaron mid-laugh at something the photographer had said. My chest tightened with quiet pride. Somehow, we'd built something good here, something worth holding on to. The faint rush of water through the pipes told me Aaron was already in the shower. I picked up Chloe's stuffed bunny from the couch, intending to return it to her room, when a flash of floral print on the desk caught my eye. Erin's journal. The same notebook I'd bought her on a whim last year. She'd kept journals in college, pages of thoughts and feelings she rarely said out loud. Recently, she'd mentioned writing again, just to clear her head. Usually, she kept it tucked safely in the nightstand. But tonight, it lay open on the desk. I stepped toward the doorway, meaning only to close it and put it away for her. Then I saw my name written neatly across the open page. A pinch of guilt twisted in my gut. I shouldn't look. I knew that. But my name was right there, mid-sentence, staring up at me. Just one line, I told myself. Maybe it's sweet. Maybe it's about the barbecue or the kids or nothing important at all. I set Chloe's bunny aside and picked up the journal carefully, glancing toward the hallway. The shower was still running. She wouldn't be done for a while. If it felt too private, I'd stop. That was the promise I made to myself. The entry looked short. Curiosity pressed harder than restraint. Taking a quiet breath, I began to read. September 7th. This afternoon, I saw Elias outside in the yard, laughing with the kids as they chased each other through the grass. The sound should have been ordinary, comforting, but instead, it crushed me. For a fleeting, unbearable second, the weight of my own guilt nearly drove me to my knees. He has always been kind to me, steady, good. Good to all of us. He does not deserve this. Yet I can't seem to stop. I blinked hard at the words, crushing guilt. A shiver crawled across my skin, leaving me cold. Doesn't deserve this, can't stop. What was she admitting to? My chest tightened as I read on, each line pounding louder in my skull. I can't turn off what I feel for him. When I'm with Elias, everything feels calm, solid, safe, and I do love him, I swear I do. But when I'm around Aaron, it's like something inside me wakes up. Those stolen fragments of time feel electric, intoxicating. And then, afterward, I hate myself so much I can barely breathe. I know what I'm doing, betraying a man who trusts me more than anyone ever has. At the barbecue earlier, I sat across from Elias, smiling like I wasn't dying inside, pretending everything was normal, even though 2 days ago I was in a hotel bed with Aaron. That lie almost split me in half. My hands trembled as I gripped the page. The ink seemed to swim, sharpen, stab me in the chest with every word. Aaron. Hotel room. Stolen moments. Betrayal. No, this couldn't be real. This had to be a misunderstanding, a cruel joke, anything but this. But I kept reading, breath jagged, because I had to know. We swore to stop after that night at the Hampton Inn, at least until we figured things out. It was supposed to be goodbye, but we couldn't do it. We clung to each other like drowning people, desperate, frantic. Twice we made love, knowing we shouldn't. And then the next morning, he sat across from Elias at breakfast, laughing as if nothing had happened. I felt so filthy I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. How can I despise myself so deeply and still ache for Aaron? A strangled sound ripped out of me. My hand slapped over my mouth before I even realized I was moving. Nausea churned hot and violent through my gut. My legs buckled, and I collapsed into the chair by the desk, gripping the journal so tightly my knuckles turned bone white. My wife, my best friend, a hotel room, making love. The words throbbed in my skull, relentless, buzzing like hornets. My vision blurred, swaying between clarity and black static. My mouth was dry, tongue glued to the roof like sandpaper. Sweat slicked my forehead despite the cool air of the house. Still, I forced myself onward. I had to see. I had to read every word, no matter how much it destroyed me. Aaron wants to come clean to Sophie. I begged him not to. I can't face the chaos that would follow. It would ruin everything, hurt too many people at once. I feel like a coward. But I also can't keep lying to Elias's face. He's gentle, faithful. He doesn't deserve any of this. Last night I almost told him. The words were right there, caught in my throat, while he rubbed my shoulders. Maybe part of me wants him to find out, just so this weight can finally come off my chest. But I'm terrified. What if he leaves? What if he takes the kids? I wouldn't survive losing them. I am a terrible wife, a terrible mother. I gambled everything we built for a handful of stolen hours. I keep trying to convince myself it only happened a few times, but even once is unforgivable. Aaron and I swore it was over after that hotel night. God, I hope we keep that promise. I couldn't read any further. The journal slipped from my hands and hit the desk with a dull thud. There were more entries, more confessions, but I couldn't bear another word. My vision narrowed, the edges tunneling to black as panic clawed at me from all sides. My chest heaved in shallow gasps, like an animal trapped with no way out. I squeezed my eyes shut, tried to breathe. But how do you breathe when your life has just exploded? Aaron, my Aaron. She had been unfaithful. Not with a stranger, with Aaron, my closest friend. Hotel rooms, multiple times. The journal hinted at another rendezvous just 2 days ago, Thursday. Thursday? The same night Aaron claimed she had a late meeting. The night Sophie watched the kids for an hour, covering for her. My stomach twisted so violently I thought I might vomit. That was it. That was the night. While Sophie babysat without knowing, Aaron was betraying us both, with him. Scarlet fury churned with the hollow agony ripping through my chest. The betrayal was so layered, so immense, it felt bottomless, like drowning in it with no chance to surface. The man I'd called my best friend had sat at my table, laughed over beers, played with my kids, all while carrying the secret that he'd been with my wife. My wife, who whispered, "I love you," into my neck at night with the same mouth she'd used on him in some cheap motel room. I jolted from the chair, muscles tight and restless, unable to keep still another heartbeat. The black reflection in my dormant computer screen glared back. A stranger's face, bloodless skin, clenched jaw, frantic eyes. I gripped the desk until my knuckles whitened, digging hard enough to feel bone, forcing the tremor in my arms to stop. Above me, water shut off. The shower. One clear thought sliced through the static in my head. She doesn't know I know. The realization steadied me, barely. I still held the advantage of silence. But what the hell was I supposed to do with it? Part of me wanted to storm into the bedroom, scream, demand the truth. Let every ounce of fury I carried tear free. But the colder voice, the one that had saved me in professional crises, urged caution. Once I confronted her, there was no going back. She'd lie. She'd twist it. She'd make it about something else. If she realized I'd read the journal, she'd rewrite the story, wall herself off. And Aaron, God, Aaron, what was I going to do about him? My gaze dropped to the journal lying open on the desk. Pages I hadn't touched yet waited like coiled snakes. Hands shaking, I flipped back, desperate to see it all, to uncover every secret scrap of their betrayal. Mid-August, a drunken movie night at the Parkers. Their first kiss. Her guilt the next morning. Another entry, in Aaron's car, while I was away on business. The words swam before my eyes, stomach lurching. 2 months ago, they slept together for the first time. His house. Sophie gone for the weekend. Every line cut deeper. Still I couldn't stop. Every new wound seemed to prepare me for the next. Piece by piece, the truth took shape. Months of stolen moments of trying to quit and failing, of giving in again and again. She wrote about the thrill, about the pull she couldn't fight. She never wrote the word love, but it bled between every sentence. I slammed the journal shut, bile rising. My teeth ached from clenching them so hard. Upstairs, footsteps creaked, the soft weight of Aaron moving across the bedroom floor. Leave. The word burned in my mind, insistent, urgent. If I stayed, I'd break. I'd shout. I'd do something I couldn't take back. But the kids were asleep. If I confronted her now, they'd wake to screaming, to chaos they didn't deserve. No, not them. Whatever storm came next, I had to keep Blake and Chloe out of it. I dragged a deep breath into my lungs. Set the journal exactly where I'd found it, open to the same page, like nothing had been touched. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Chloe's stuffed bunny lay by the chair. I picked it up, padded to her room, and tucked it beside her hand. She stirred, mumbling softly, and I kissed her warm forehead. My sweet kids. How was I supposed to protect them from what was about to tear this house apart? As I stepped into the hallway, light spilled across the floorboards. The bedroom door opened. Aaron's shadow crossed the landing. Instinct took over. I slipped into the guest room, easing the door shut to a sliver. Through the narrow crack, I saw her heading for the stairs, pajama shorts and one of my old college t-shirts hanging loose on her frame. "Elias?" she called softly, voice uncertain. She must have noticed I wasn't downstairs. I held my breath, throat dry, scrambling for any reason not to answer. Silence. Then faint clinking in the kitchen, glass on countertop, water pouring. My fists curled so tight my nails dug into my palms. She was just a few feet away, oblivious to the fact her own words had detonated my world. I forced my hands open, forced my face into something resembling calm. Step by step I left the guest room and descended the stairs, every footfall heavy, deliberate. She turned at the sink, soft against the dim kitchen light, wearing my shirt as if nothing had happened. Her hair clung wetly against her head, smoothed flat and shining under the light. Nothing remarkable, a simple scene. My wife, standing in the kitchen glow like always. But I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Not after what I'd uncovered. "Hey," I said, surprised that my voice came out steady. Relief flickered, strangely shocking. She spun slightly at the sound, eyes widening in mild surprise. "Oh, there you are." A wrinkle tightened her forehead. "I was starting to wonder where you were. You okay? You look pale." I stepped past her toward the cupboard, keeping my shoulders loose, pretending nothing stirred beneath my skin. "Yeah, just tired." As I poured water into a glass, I added, "I checked on the kids. Must have nodded off in their room for a bit." That wasn't a complete lie. I often stayed until their breathing evened out. Her face softened, the tension melting into a gentle smile. "Long day," she murmured, moving closer. She wrapped her arms around me, resting her cheek on my shoulder. "You've been incredible today. Thank you for everything." Her gratitude, soft and unguarded, curdled something inside me. I stared at the steady stream of water from the tap, fingers gripping the glass tight enough to hurt. Her warmth, once a sanctuary, now left my muscles rigid. Could she feel it? She drew back slightly, studying me. "Are you sure you're okay?" I nodded too fast, swallowing water to buy time. If I spoke too soon, I'd break, or accuse, or scream. "Just worn out," I forced out, the lie scraping its way up my throat. Might be catching something. I fussed with the glass, avoiding her eyes, though I caught her quiet worry at the edge of my vision. "You've been running yourself ragged," she said softly, brushing her fingers across my forehead to check for fever. I made myself stay still, resisting the urge to flinch. "Maybe try to sleep early tonight?" "Yeah," I answered dully, setting the glass down. "That's probably best." The sound of my own voice didn't feel like mine. A heavy silence settled between us. I felt her gaze lingering, searching, but I refused to meet it. At last, she cleared her throat. "I'm going to read for a bit. Want me to come up with you?" The thought of lying beside her, pretending nothing had shifted, tightened my chest. "No, that's okay," I said quickly. "I'll probably pass out as soon as I hit the bed. Enjoy your book." I forced a thin smile, brittle and wrong. Her smile faltered, her brow pinching again. She reached out, cool palm against my cheek. "You're not warm," she murmured. I eased away, trying to seem casual. "Maybe just a headache. I'll be fine." Her eyes skimmed over me, noticing I was still in the same clothes. "You didn't even change," she whispered to herself, then added more gently, "Come upstairs. No need to sit here alone." Her kindness cut through me like a blade. She wanted me in our bed, as if it weren't stained, as if love and betrayal could coexist in the same space. My jaw clenched. I turned away, rubbing my temple, letting the motion excuse my silence. It's quieter down here, I lied smoothly. Darker too. My head's pounding. I'll sleep better here. She hesitated, startled by my distance. We were almost never apart at night unless I was traveling. If she pushed, I might break. I silently begged her not to. Finally, she exhaled softly. Okay, if that's what you need. Want me to grab you anything? Painkillers? More water? I'm good, I murmured. Just need rest. Okay, she echoed, reluctant. She bent to kiss the crown of my head, a weightless, familiar gesture that almost unraveled me. So gentle, so ordinary, so ruined. I stayed motionless. Good night, she whispered. Hope you feel better, babe. Thanks, I muttered, barely audible. Moments later, she slipped up the staircase, easing the door behind her until it hovered half-closed. Only when the latch whispered against the frame did I realize my lungs had been locked tight. I exhaled, a shaky release that felt like surrender. Being near her now was like walking barefoot through a minefield, every glance, every syllable hiding the threat of detonation. But surviving this short encounter intact, it sparked the faintest ember of resolve inside me. I could do this. I could keep my silence until the moment came to strike. I collapsed backward onto the guest bed, still fully dressed, shoes pressing against the blanket. My body unfurled in a heap, drained and heavy. In the dark, hot tears carved quick paths down my cheeks. I buried my face in the pillow, stifling the jagged sobs before they reached the quiet house. How could she? The question howled through me, relentless and deafening. How could she betray everything we'd built, our marriage, our family? And with him, my closest friend. I might have drowned in that torment all night, swallowed whole by grief, if not for the gnawing need rising in my chest. Air, clarity, something to steady me. Dragging myself upright, I moved like a ghost through the house. I checked the locks, set the alarm, performed the familiar rituals my hands knew by instinct, while my thoughts reeled in chaos. I skirted the thin line of light leaking from beneath our bedroom door. She was likely curled up with a book, just as she'd said earlier. I couldn't bring myself to look. Instead, I retreated to the silent guest room, shutting myself inside its dim cocoon. When I fell onto the mattress, the dam finally gave way. Silent sobs racked me, my chest raw, my teeth clamped into the pillow to muffle the sound. Every muscle quivered from the effort of holding myself together. Why? The word pounded through my head without mercy. At last, after endless waves of crying, the storm began to ebb. What remained was colder, sharper, a hard edge I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't broken. Not yet. Even as one part of me mourned, another part began to plan. I had been a good man, a faithful husband, a devoted father. But I would not be humiliated. I would not quietly accept this betrayal. Aaron and Aaron had no idea I knew. They were still wearing their masks, still playing normal, certain I was blind. That belief lit something fierce inside me, a spark of fury I could wield like a weapon. I drew a ragged breath. You need a plan. Charging in blindly would hand them control, open the door to manipulation, excuses, lies. If I stayed calm, if I thought 3 steps ahead, I could shield my children, secure my future, and ensure both of them faced the cost of what they'd done. One truth rang unshakable. The marriage was dead. Accepting that felt like tearing out a piece of myself, but clinging to denial would only deepen the wound. Even if Aaron begged, even if she swore it was a mistake, I knew better. Her own words, scrawled in that journal, were undeniable. Not a single lapse, multiple encounters, real feelings. There was no road back from that. The trust was obliterated. The love, that was the cruelest part. I still loved the version of her I thought I knew, the wife I believed in. But the person who had done this? She was a stranger wearing Aaron's face. I shut my eyes, forcing air slowly through the ache in my chest. Focus, Elias, step by step. First move, stronger proof than her journal. If this spiraled into divorce, into custody battles, I needed evidence that couldn't be twisted or dismissed. The journal could be painted as fiction, a violation of privacy. I needed something they couldn't dispute. Catching them together would be ideal. But would they risk it now? The journal hinted they planned to cool things after last Thursday's rendezvous. Promises, though, are fragile, especially when people think they're safe. Maybe I could nudge them into a mistake. Create an opening. My mind flashed back to where it had all unraveled. Earlier that day. The first crack in the facade. A text message. I'd seen it on Aaron's phone, pure accident. But that single buzz had set everything in motion. An unknown number. Words meant for her. You were incredible today. Can't wait for tomorrow. My reply had been instant, calculated, pretending to be her, baiting the hook. Thanks, babe. Remind me again about the time and place. The response came fast. Are you using Shell's phone? Make sure to delete this. Can't have Sheldon catching on too soon. Sure, at our house. I remembered standing frozen on the staircase, staring at those words as the floor dropped out beneath me. Aaron and Sophie used to tease me with a nickname, Sheldon. It came from some long-buried joke about the Big Bang Theory that none of us could probably explain anymore. Aaron, always the one to shorten things, started calling me Shell. That nickname resurfaced in my mind as I stared at the message thread on my phone. The realization hit me like ice water. Aaron hadn't meant to send that warning to me. He believed he was texting Erin, alerting her that I was beginning to catch on. When I first saw it, the shock had frozen me in place. I shoved the truth into some corner of my mind, pretending it didn't exist. But it lingered, gnawing at me. The number was familiar. Too familiar. Aaron's burner phone, and that was when the puzzle pieces finally locked into place. The reason I had gone digging through Aaron's journal suddenly made perfect sense. If there was any digital breadcrumb trail, texts, calls, evidence of what they thought they'd hidden, it would be there. If I could get hold of Aaron's phone, or even an old backup, I'd have what I needed, irrefutable proof. But proof wouldn't be enough on its own. I needed an ally. Sophie. Poor Sophie. From what I could tell, she was blissfully unaware. Or so I hoped. Aaron's journal hinted Aaron had considered confessing to her, might tell her everything he'd written, but based on her usual cheerful demeanor at the barbecue, that hadn't happened. Not yet. I couldn't let her stay in the dark. She deserved to know. She deserved the truth about her husband. And if she did know, maybe she'd help me expose them both. But timing was everything. Too early, and I might lose my chance to collect concrete evidence. Too late, and I'd be complicit in keeping her blind. The only way forward was careful coordination. Sophie was perceptive, tough. If we joined forces, we could dismantle their facade one lie at a time, confirm the affair, then corner Aaron and Aaron with undeniable proof. A plan began forming in my head, sharp and deliberate. I would approach Sophie quietly, give her a glimpse of what I'd uncovered, not the journal entries right away, but enough to open her eyes. Together, we'd bait Aaron and Aaron into a meeting and catch them in the act. With Sophie present, they couldn't deny a thing. I forced myself to breathe, to steady my shaking hands, for my kids' sake, for my own sanity. An outburst wouldn't help me, it would warn them. I would be precise, strategic. I'd gather proof, lock everything in place, and when the moment came, unleash everything. In the silent dark of that room, I swore an oath. Aaron and Aaron would regret every secret smile, every whispered lie. They thought I was oblivious, an easy mark. They were wrong. I pushed myself upright and reached for my phone. The screen glowed faintly in the dark, just past 11 p.m. For one reckless heartbeat, I considered firing off a furious text to either of them. But no, that would only tip them off. Instead, I opened Mark Linton's contact, an old friend from college, now a family lawyer. My thumb hovered as I typed, "Mark, it's Elias. Something serious has come up and I may need legal advice. Can we talk Monday?" I didn't send it. Not yet. I'd look at it again with fresh eyes in the morning. Still, drafting it gave me a strange sense of control, like I'd planted a marker on the battlefield. Then I pulled up Sophie's number. We'd only ever exchanged casual texts before. Carpool logistics, birthdays, barbecue invites, nothing heavy. This would change everything. Face to face would be best. somewhere neutral, somewhere Aaron wouldn't question. Coffee, tomorrow morning. My fingers trembled as I typed, "Hi, Sophie. I need to talk to you in person about something important. Can we meet privately tomorrow morning?" I stared at it for a beat, then hit send. Almost instantly, the typing bubbles appeared. "Sophie, sure, is everything okay? You sound serious." Me, "It's about something I found out. I'm sorry I can't explain over text. Bluebird Cafe, 9:30, after school drop-off." Sophie, "Okay, I'll be there. Now I'm worried." Me, "We'll talk tomorrow, I promise. Thank you, Sophie." Sophie, "All right, try to sleep, okay? See you in the morning." I set my phone aside, chest tight but resolute. The night crawled by in fragments of restless sleep. Every time I drifted off, I jolted awake, heart racing, memories replaying. Aaron's late nights at work, offhand comments I'd brushed aside, innocent texts that, under this new light, felt anything but innocent. Was she with him that afternoon she swore she'd been stuck at the office? Tomorrow everything would shift. Tomorrow would mark the first step toward reckoning. Chapter 3. Allies in Betrayal. Dawn came sharp and unforgiving. By the time I heard Aaron moving with the kids, I'd already showered and dressed, adrenaline taking the place of rest. I stepped out of the guest room, feigning the remnants of a migraine as an excuse for sleeping apart. She glanced at me with mild concern but said nothing, her hands full with toast, backpacks, and last-minute reminders. Our conversation stayed safely routine. Blake's friend's birthday party, Chloe's dance rehearsal, pickup schedules, and car seats. I nodded along, wearing the mask of a tired husband grateful for his wife's help. But beneath the mask, truth burned hotter than fire. "I'm heading to the office for a bit," I said, trying to sound casual, almost indifferent, as though it were nothing out of the ordinary. The falsehood rolled off my tongue effortlessly. I'd practiced it in my mind for days leading up to this moment. "I promised a co-worker I'd help review a proposal," I added. "Can you handle the kids until I'm back later today?" "Of course," she said warmly. Her gaze lingered on me, her hand reaching up to fix the uneven edge of my shirt collar. "You sure you're okay?" she asked softly, her brows knitting together in concern. "You've seemed worn down lately. Maybe you should rest instead. Work will still be there tomorrow." Her kindness struck me like a blade, sharp and unrelenting. I forced a weak smile, steadying my voice as best I could. "I'll be fine," I lied once more. "Couple of Excedrin and I'll be good." She accepted my answer without question, leaning in to brush a kiss against my cheek. I stiffened, barely noticeable, but enough for me to feel it. She didn't catch it. Already she was turning away, calling for the kids, shepherding them toward breakfast. As I stepped through the door, their cheerful voices followed me, high-pitched goodbyes and bubbling laughter filling the hallway. I waved back, my chest tightening with the bitter awareness that they had no idea how close their world was to unraveling. I did stop by the office, but only briefly, just long enough to print out personal paperwork I knew I'd need. Bank statements, mortgage information, the sort of documents you don't want to scramble for when lawyers enter the picture. The fact that I was already thinking in terms of legal logistics told me everything. I was in full-blown crisis mode. By 9:20 a.m., I pulled into the lot of the Bluebird Cafe, a quiet little spot tucked downtown in Salt Lake City. Cozy, unassuming, the kind of place where no one paid much attention to anyone else. I chose a table tucked into the far corner, deliberately facing the door, and ordered a black coffee, more for something to do with my hands than anything else. My leg bounced restlessly under the table. My fingers wouldn't stay still. Because how do you look someone in the eye and tell them their spouse and their closest friend have betrayed them? At exactly 9:30, Sophie walked in, right on time. I rose to my feet, lifting a hand in greeting. Her face brightened the moment she saw me, that familiar, warm smile she was known for. But as she approached, I noticed something flicker behind her green eyes. Worry, unease. Sophie had always been small and sunny, chestnut brown hair framing a kind face, dressed today in jeans and a light sweater, the picture of the friendly neighbor anyone would be lucky to have. My stomach twisted, knowing I was about to crush her world. "Hey, you!" she said as she set her purse on the table. "You have no idea the wild theories I've been spinning since you texted. Is this a surprise party? Are you moving? Or—" She gasped theatrically, eyes wide in mock horror. "Wait, are you secretly in the CIA? Is this my recruitment interview?" She laughed softly, teasing, fishing for answers while trying to keep the mood light. I managed a faint smile, caught somewhere between apology and sorrow. "I didn't mean to freak you out," I said quietly. "But what I need to tell you, this isn't really coffee shop conversation. Still, I figured this was neutral ground." The playfulness vanished instantly. Concern settled in its place. "You're scaring me, Elias," she whispered. "What's going on?" Realizing I was still standing awkwardly beside the chair, I gestured for her to sit. I joined her, throat dry, the words I'd rehearsed clogging up in my chest. "Let's get you something first," I muttered, stalling. "We're both going to need it." She hesitated, then nodded. We went to the counter, ordered her a latte, and returned to the secluded corner. The cafe was quiet at this hour, soft indie music drifting overhead, a handful of strangers lost in their own worlds. Sophie cupped her mug in both hands, searching my face. "Elias," she said gently, "whatever it is, just say it. It's only us here." I caught myself twisting my wedding ring, a nervous habit I hated but couldn't stop. Forcing my hands still, I drew in a shaky breath. There was no way to cushion this, no way to make it less devastating. The only option left was blunt honesty, delivered with as much care as I could muster. "Sophie," I began softly, "I found something out on Saturday." My voice faltered. Something about Aaron and Aaron. Confusion clouded her expression, her brows knitting. She didn't have the full picture yet, but instinct was already warning her it was bad. "Okay," she said slowly, bracing herself. I swallowed hard. They've been having an affair. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. It was the first time I'd said them out loud. For a heartbeat, she didn't react, just stared at me, as if I were speaking a language she didn't understand. Then she blinked, let out a short, stunned laugh, part disbelief, part denial. "I'm sorry, what?" My chest ached for her. "I know, it sounds insane. I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't seen proof, but it's real." Her head shook slowly, her wide eyes scanning my face for any hint of humor or malice, any sign that this wasn't true. Her face turned ghostly pale, lips parting as if the air had been stolen from her lungs. No, that's not possible. It can't be." The words trembled, splintering mid-breath. "Aaron and Aaron? No, they wouldn't." The sentence dissolved into silence, swallowed by a sob she tried desperately to suppress. Watching her crumble felt unbearable, knowing I was the one tearing apart the fragile reality she thought she lived in. But better she learned it from me than from whispered rumors or some cruel accident of timing. Quietly, I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim folder, the one holding Aaron's journal. I'd debated for hours whether to show her. It wasn't mine to expose. But the truth was carved into those pages, undeniable. Alongside it, I'd tucked printed screenshots of their messages. This is Aaron's journal," I said softly, my voice barely audible. "I found it yesterday. It wasn't on purpose. But she wrote everything." I opened the notebook to a page I had marked and slid it toward her across the table. This part, it describes one of the times they met, at a hotel. Sophie stared at the notebook like it might detonate in her hands. Her trembling fingers hovered, then turned the page. Her eyes darted back and forth, scanning every line, confusion flashing first, then disbelief, and finally a raw, dawning horror. A hand shot to her mouth. Her breathing turned shallow, uneven. When she finally looked up, her eyes were brimming. "That son of a—" Her voice cracked and cut itself off. "And her? I can't believe this." The dam broke. Her shoulders collapsed inward, and tears streaked down her face in silent waves. "I know," I whispered, my throat thick. "I'm so sorry." Sophie dragged the back of her hand roughly across her cheeks. The grief in her expression hardened into something sharper, molten. He was with her on Thursday, wasn't he? When he told me he had some client thing out of town? I hesitated before nodding. Yes, they spent that afternoon at the Hampton Inn. She wrote about it. Sophie's face twisted. Anger, disgust, grief, crashing into each other all at once. She shoved the journal away as though it burned her and buried her face in her hands. Her body shook with quiet, violent sobs. I reached across the table, barely touching her arm. Sophie, I know this is unbearable, but I'm here. You're not alone. She sniffled and lowered her hands. Her eyes were red and raw, but behind them burned something fierce, something unbroken. Those bastards, she whispered hoarsely. How long has it been going on? Since July, I said softly. From what I pieced together, that's when it started, off and on, maybe 3 or 4 times physically. Sophie let out a short, bitter laugh that cut like broken glass. Oh, 3 or 4 times. Well, that makes it so much better, doesn't it? She shook her head, anger rising like armor. God, I was blind. I didn't see any of it. Neither did I admitted. They were careful, too careful. Her chest heaved in an uneven breath. Have you confronted them yet? I shook my head. Not yet. I only found out last night. I wanted you to hear it first, before they have a chance to twist things or warn each other. Her jaw set hard. You're right. We need to be smart about this. Her gaze locked with mine, steady now. What do you want to do? Seeing her steadiness gave me courage. I think we need undeniable proof, or at least a plan that forces them to admit it. The journal is strong evidence, but Aaron could claim she made it up. Aaron could gaslight you if it's just our word against theirs. Sophie nodded grimly. He would, and honestly, part of me wants to see it for myself, hear it from them. I hesitated before suggesting carefully, what if we set a trap? Give them a chance to meet and catch them in the act, or confront them separately at the same time so neither can warn the other. Sophie's tear-streaked face shifted, pain hardening into something resolute. She was with me. Like, trick them into thinking we're both out and see if they take the bait? Exactly, I said, the plan forming as I spoke. I could tell Aaron I'm working late tomorrow. You tell Aaron you're staying overnight at your sister's. If they think they've got the evening free, they might meet, at one of your houses or somewhere else. Sophie grimaced but nodded slowly. They probably would. We were prepared to wait them out. My fingers dug back into my bag, pulling out another damning piece of proof. I've got something else, I murmured. I spread a printed sheet across the table, copies of text messages I'd spent the morning retrieving. I'd torn through every technical trick I knew to recover them from our cloud backup. The same messages I'd only glimpsed on Saturday, but hadn't been able to confirm until now. Sliding the paper toward Sophie, I kept my voice low. This is what Aaron sent to Aaron's phone. I intercepted it before she could read it. There's no misreading this. Sophie's hands trembled as she lifted the page, her eyes scanning the exchange. When she read it aloud, her voice cut sharp, bitter. You were amazing today. Can't wait for tomorrow. Her jaw locked tight. Unreal. And this part, can't have Sheldon suspecting anything. She slammed the paper down. He used your name as cover. That's beyond disgusting. Rage flickered across her face, then broke into tears she fought to hold back. She shut her eyes, breathing hard through clenched teeth. I want to burn it all down, she whispered, voice shaking. But more than revenge, I just need to make it through this without losing my mind. I reached across the table and covered her trembling hand. We'll make it through, I told her, echoing her own words back at her. First step, we confront them, then we figure out the rest, even divorce if that's where this ends. The word hung between us like a heavy stone. Divorce. Sophie bit her lip and nodded. I'm meeting a lawyer this afternoon, I admitted softly, just to be ready. She exhaled, long and low. I should do the same. Never thought I'd have to, but you're right. We coordinate, we confront, then we file, no hesitation, No mercy, I agreed. There was nothing left worth salvaging. For the next 30 minutes, we whispered fast and fierce, hammering out the details of what came next. By the time we were done, the plan was locked. Tomorrow night, Monday, would be the reckoning. It felt sudden, but neither of us could stand another day pretending life was normal. Here's how we said it. I'd tell Aaron there was an emergency at work, that I might have to crash at a coworker's if it ran late. Meanwhile, Sophie would claim her sister needed her overnight because of a crisis. Both Aaron and Erin would think they were in the clear. That would give them the perfect chance to arrange a meeting, most likely at Aaron and Sophie's place. Their house was only 10 minutes from Aaron's, and Aaron's usual Monday basketball game gave him the perfect cover to bail. And if they don't bite, I asked, then we split up and confront them separately, Sophie said flatly. We set a cutoff. If nothing happened by 8:30, we'd each go home and face them head on at 9. Part of me, the darkest part, hoped they would meet up. Seeing them together might be the clean break I needed. No more doubts, no more excuses. I suspected Sophie felt the same. Before she left, she gave me a look, fury and resolve fighting in her eyes. Thank you for telling me, she whispered. I hate this, but I'm glad I'm not alone. You're not, I said firmly. We've got each other's backs. A faint, pained smile tugged at her mouth. Then let's make them regret it. We hugged hard in the parking lot, two unwilling allies bound by betrayal. As I drove away, one bitter thought echoed in my head. Aaron and Erin thought they were clever, sneaking around. But now we were the ones making plans, and they'd never see it coming. The rest of Sunday crawled by, thick and heavy like wading through molasses. At home, I stayed quiet, withdrawn. Erin noticed. She frowned, puzzled by my distance. I muttered something about a stubborn headache. At one point, she even offered to massage my temples, but I couldn't bear to let her touch me. I forced civility, no fights, no sharp edges, but every smile she offered cut deep. Every hum she let out while folding laundry made me want to scream, "How could you?" But I swallowed it down. Just make it to tomorrow night. That was my mantra. Sophie and I kept in touch through an encrypted chat. Paranoia felt justified now. By Monday morning, every detail was airtight. Sophie would swing by my house after work under the guise of dropping off paperwork. In truth, she'd pick me up. I'd tell Aaron I needed to head out because of car trouble, the excuse we'd rehearsed. Then Sophie and I would stash my truck somewhere out of sight and park near the Price house to watch. If Aaron showed up there after dinner, we'd confront them on the spot. If not, Plan B, separate confrontations at 9 sharp. That night I packed a small bag in silence, just essentials. I doubted I'd sleep in that house again anytime soon. The thought of the kids nearly shattered me. Their faces, their confusion, they didn't deserve any of this. And that was the part that hurt the most. One careful step after another, that was all I could manage. By Monday morning, faint sunlight filtered through the blinds, pale and indifferent. Erin greeted the day with her usual Monday cheer. She thrived on routine, especially her paralegal job at the firm downtown. As always, she kissed me goodbye, radiating energy and blissfully oblivious to the storm brewing beneath my skin. I answered her affection with a muted smile, masking everything I felt. Around noon, I met Mark for lunch. He was more than a friend. He'd been my sounding board for years, and as an attorney, he understood the weight of what I was about to do. I laid out the facts, sparing him the explicit details to protect both Erin's dignity and my own. Mark listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair, disgust flickering across his features. By the end of the meal, he promised to have divorce papers drafted before the week closed, citing infidelity. I might talk to her tonight, I confessed, barely above a whisper. Mark's response was immediate, a quiet but firm warning, keep calm. Whatever happens, stay in control. A bitter laugh escaped me. I don't plan on hitting anyone, I muttered, though I silently admitted the night could unravel fast. His words stuck with me anyway. He also insisted I safeguard my finances, quietly move half the joint savings before the confrontation. If things exploded, at least I wouldn't be left exposed. The advice made sense. After lunch, I moved the money into an account solely under my name. Aaron would discover it eventually, but by then, none of it would matter. Later, I traded texts with Sophie. Picking up the kids and dropping them at Mom's. Told them I'm helping Aunt Carol overnight. They didn't question it. Me, smart. My folks can cover mine tomorrow if needed. Aaron thinks I'm working late, maybe crashing at a friend's. Sophie. Told Aaron I'm headed to Logan to stay with my sister. Said she's sick. He bought it, kissed me and said, "Drive safe." Me, just a few more hours, we're almost there. Sophie, I'll be at your place by 6. Me, see you then. As evening approached, tension coiled tight in my chest, every nerve exposed. I kept up appearances, family dinner, small talk, laughter forced through clenched teeth. Then I stood abruptly, letting out an exaggerated sigh as I grabbed my keys. Emergency at work, I muttered, glancing at my watch. Might be an overnight thing. Aaron's brows knit in sympathy. Oh no, can I do anything? I forced a weary grin. Not unless you've suddenly mastered stress testing airplanes. She chuckled, shaking her head. Guess not. I'll keep your side of the bed warm. Then softer. Are you sure you don't need tomorrow off if you'll be up all night? I'll manage, I assured her. If it runs late, I'll just crash at Mike's so I'm not driving home half asleep. Mike, a colleague she'd met once, was a convenient alibi. All right, she whispered. Be careful. Text me if you need anything. She followed me to the door, kissed me, gentle, lingering. Every instinct screamed to recoil, but I forced myself to return it, the hypocrisy of her tenderness burning through me. Love you, she murmured. The words cut like acid. Love you too, I answered, praying she couldn't hear the fracture in my voice. Stepping into the cool air, my pulse thundered in my ears. That might be the last time those words ever passed between us. The final chapter of a marriage turned hollow. Moments later, a silver Camry rolled up to the curb. Sophie. I hurried over, slipped into the passenger seat, instinctively ducking low. Aaron wasn't likely watching from the window, but I wasn't about to risk it. Sophie wore a baseball cap, hair tucked beneath, a subtle disguise. I'd done the same, pulling my hood low. We looked less like two betrayed spouses and more like undercover operatives heading into hostile territory. Hey, I muttered. Hey, she echoed, her jaw tight but steady. Ready? I nodded, buckled in. The first few blocks passed in silence, tension thick between us, but mutual. Then, per our plan, we abandoned her Camry on a quiet side street and transferred to my truck. Higher vantage point, better maneuverability. If things turned confrontational, I trusted my vehicle more. As we drove toward her house, Sophie tapped out a quick text. Letting Mom know I'll grab the kids tomorrow, she murmured, thumbs flying across the screen. I realized I'd need to loop my own parents in soon. The next 24 hours were about to get messy, fast. I shot off a brief text to my dad. Might need you and Mom to watch Blake and Chloe for a couple of days. We'll explain later. His response came almost immediately. Whatever you need, we've got you. By the time we turned onto Maple Lane, the quiet, tree-shaded street where the Parkers lived, the night had fully settled. We parked half a block away, beneath a sprawling maple whose thick branches cloaked us in shadow. From there, we had a partial view of their front door. The house looked peaceful. Aaron's car was parked in the driveway. He was home. Sophie had confirmed that earlier. She'd texted him under the guise of being too tired to make their usual basketball game. He hadn't suspected a thing. So we waited. My pulse thundered so violently in my ears that I wondered if Sophie could hear it. She sat rigid in the passenger seat, her leg bouncing restlessly. Minutes dragged by in suffocating silence. Then, just past 7:30, headlights cut across the street. A white SUV. Aaron's SUV. Sophie stiffened beside me as the vehicle slowed and turned into the Parkers' driveway. The moment struck me with surreal clarity. There was my wife, composed, unsuspecting, pulling into my best friend's home, certain I was far away and oblivious. watching it unfold in real time, no longer just words in the journal I'd discovered, ignited a cold, focused fury deep in my chest. Erin stepped out of her car, glanced up and down the street, and hurried toward the front door. She'd changed since I'd last seen her. Simple black dress, flats. She looked like my Erin, yet crossing that threshold, she felt like a trespasser in someone else's life. She knocked softly. Sophie murmured that Erin usually left the door unlocked for her, but Erin must not have known. Moments later, the door cracked open. Erin appeared, motioning her inside quickly, almost nervously. I caught only a flicker of his face, eager, uneasy. The door closed. Sophie exhaled shakily, her hands clenched so tight around her phone that her knuckles blanched. "They're inside," she whispered, voice taut with anger and heartbreak. "Yeah," I said quietly. The confirmation twisted something sharp inside me, rage, betrayal, but oddly, alongside it, a kind of relief. There was no more room for doubt. We met each other's gaze. "Ready?" I asked. Sophie's jaw tightened. She nodded. "Ready?" I reached behind the seat and pulled out the small voice recorder I'd brought. "I'm recording this, for evidence." "Good," she muttered, unlocking her own phone and starting an audio recording. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the truck. Sophie exited on the other side. Without speaking, we walked together down the sidewalk toward the Parkers' front door, two silent figures closing in on an unsuspecting truth. Warm light spilled through the living room windows. Behind thin curtains, two shapes, Erin and Erin, stood close, speaking in hushed tones. They hadn't moved farther into the house yet. We reached the walkway. Every instinct screamed at me to burst inside, but I forced myself to stay in control. Sophie slid her key into the lock. Of course she had one. It was her home. She shot me a quick look, inhaled deeply, and turned it. The door swung open. There they were. Erin and Erin stood in the foyer, only feet away. Their heads snapped toward us, eyes wide. For one suspended heartbeat, no one moved. Erin's face drained of color, shock freezing her features as she registered me beside Sophie. Erin's mouth fell open, his hand dropping guiltily away from Erin's arm. They looked like children caught with stolen candy. The silence pressed in, suffocating. Every sound, the ticking clock, the low hum of the refrigerator, suddenly roared in the stillness. I stepped inside. My voice was unnervingly calm, cutting through the quiet. "Don't let us stop you. Clearly you were in the middle of something." Erin made a strangled sound, half gasp, half sob. Erin blinked rapidly, hands lifting as if to ward off a blow. This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. Sophie stepped up beside me, her fury cold and precise. "Really?" she hissed. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like my husband and my best friend's wife sneaking around behind our backs. So please, explain. What else could it possibly be?" Erin's lips trembled. "Sophie, Elias," she whispered, barely audible. Tears welled in her eyes almost instantly. A toxic mix of guilt and terror twisted in my stomach, threatening to drag me under. I can explain," I murmured, though even I knew the words rang hollow. For a split second, it was as though I had slipped free of my own skin, an outsider observing this moment from some distant frozen perch. The careful speech I'd prepared for this reckoning dissolved instantly, scattering like smoke on the wind. The anger I'd nursed for days hardened into something colder, sharper, a single unwavering resolve. "Go on then," I said, my voice disturbingly steady. "Explain." I moved farther into the house, my presence heavy, filling the silence. The door clicked shut behind me, soft in sound, but deafening in weight. "Explain," I repeated, gesturing toward the room, toward them. "Explain how my wife, and the man I once called my brother, decided this was acceptable, that this was something you could do, behind my back." Erin's face flared red, blotches creeping up his throat like spreading fire. His gaze flicked desperately toward Sophie, searching for support that wasn't there. "Sophie, I'm sorry," he stammered, his words splintering apart. "I don't know how—" "Don't!" she snapped, her hand slicing through the air like a blade. Her eyes glistened, but her voice was pure steel. Don't you dare feed us another pathetic excuse. We both know exactly what's been happening. We didn't come here for another lie. Aaron stepped toward me, palms raised in surrender, voice trembling. Elias, please. I recoiled before she could touch me, instinctive, violent. She froze mid-step, horror flickering across her face. The rejection tore at me like shrapnel. It hurt more than I could admit, but her hands, her comfort, were unbearable now. How long? I asked, my tone low and lethal. How long have you been sneaking around behind me? Her lips parted, but no sound came. She glanced toward Aaron, then dropped her eyes to the floor, shame radiating off her in suffocating waves. I turned on Aaron, pinning him with the same question. What about you? Want to answer? Was it July, that school movie night, or did this start even earlier? Aaron's eyes widened. He understood the trap I'd set. You read it? His voice trembled as he turned toward Aaron, realization dawning in horror. You wrote it down? As if that, her committing the affair to paper, somehow offended him more than the betrayal itself. Sophie let out a sharp, humorless bark of laughter. Oh, that's rich, she spat. You're furious she wrote it down? Aaron, you're lucky she didn't live stream the whole thing and tag the neighborhood group chat. Aaron's sobs started small, then grew into ragged, uncontrollable gasps. I'm sorry, she whispered, then louder, frantic. I'm so sorry. Her hands clasped like she was praying for mercy, face blotched and wet with tears. For a heartbeat, pity nearly cracked my resolve. But then the memory returned, her sneaking into this house, meeting him here. Anger surged back, swallowing everything else. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the journal, and hurled it onto the side table. The thud of it hitting wood was deafening in the silence. We know, I said flatly. Every single word, every detail. Your precious diary left nothing to the imagination. Erin's eyes flicked toward the notebook like it was a live grenade. Her body shook, trembling from head to toe. I never wanted you to find out like this, she sobbed. A bitter laugh ripped from my throat. Oh? So the plan was what? Never tell me? Let me keep playing the oblivious husband while you two kept sneaking around in the shadows? Aaron stepped forward, palms lifted in a pathetic attempt to calm me. Elias, just listen. No, you listen. The icy composure shattered, fury pouring out like fire. I closed the distance in 2 strides, towering over him. Aaron shrank back, shoulders curling inward, his fear almost palpable. You were my brother, I hissed. I trusted you, with my home, my family, my kids. And what did you do? You paid me back by crawling into my wife's bed. In my house, in hotels, God knows where else. Every word landed like a whip crack, and Aaron flinched as if struck. I know, he whispered, voice barely audible. I know I'm trash. There's no excuse. It was the worst mistake I've ever made. Sophie stepped forward now, her fury no longer aimed at Aaron, but at Aaron. And you, she seethed, her voice trembling with rage. I treated you like a sister. I trusted you. I babysat your children, while you were sneaking off to sleep with my husband. Her voice cracked, a sob tearing through. How could you do this to us? To them? Was it worth it? Aaron covered her face with both hands, her sobs no longer restrained, raw, guttural, broken. No, she cried. No, it wasn't worth it. I was selfish, stupid. There's no excuse. I watched her throat tighten as she swallowed, tears threatening to spill from her reddened eyes. It hadn't crossed my mind that this day would come. I thought the embers would fade on their own, that the truth would stay buried. Hurting either of you was never supposed to happen. Loving you, Elias. Loving you, Sophie. That part never ended. Stop! I snapped, my tone like ice. Don't you dare twist this into love. Love doesn't destroy everything in its path. Her hands quivered as she reached toward me, panic radiating from every movement. But I do love you, she sobbed, voice breaking apart. I always have. I never stopped. This isn't proof I didn't love you. I cut her off with a bitter shake of my head, revulsion curling in my gut. No, this happened because you loved yourself more. Her mouth opened, ready to argue, but no words came. The fight had left her. Beside her, Aaron dragged his palm down his face, muttering under his breath. God, we really screwed up, Em. He turned first to Sophie, then to me. His voice cracked when he whispered, I'm sorry, to both of you. This is on me. Don't you dare act like you're carrying it all, Sophie hissed, her tone cutting and frigid. But don't pretend she wasn't a willing partner either. The two of you. You deserve each other. Erin's head jerked up, frantic denial flashing across her tear-streaked face. No, that's not what this is. You don't understand. Her words tumbled out in panic, broken and frantic. We weren't planning anything. We weren't trying to be together. It was, God, it was stupid, empty, just some pathetic, meaningless fling. Her desperate attempt to minimize it almost made me laugh, bitter and humorless. Aaron's jaw tightened, but he masked it with a blank expression. Sophie noticed too. In a brief glance between us, I knew we both saw the fracture forming between them already. Sophie folded her arms across her chest, her fury simmering into grief. Her voice, thick with tears, came low and trembling. Whether it was just sex or more than that, you destroyed our marriages. There's no undoing this. The silence that followed crashed over us like an avalanche. Erin let out a guttural wail and dropped to her knees, sobbing so hard her breath came in gasps. Black streaks of mascara carved down her cheeks as she crawled toward me. Please, she begged. Please don't walk away, Elias. I'll do anything. I'll cut him off completely. I'll quit my job. I'll wear a tracker if you want. Just please give me a chance. We can try counseling. We can... Her pleas dissolved into frantic rambling, raw and unbearable to hear, almost unbearable. I knelt to meet her eye level but kept just beyond her reach. My voice softened, though it stayed unyielding. Erin, there's no repairing this. You didn't just slip up once. You made choice after choice to betray me, to betray us. There's no going back. Her sobs intensified, her fingers clawing at my jeans in blind desperation. I rose abruptly, forcing her grip to break. No, she moaned, realization crashing into her like a wave. Aaron's face was wet now, too. He hesitated, then reached a trembling hand toward Sophie. Sammy, Don't, Sophie cut him off, retreating as if his touch burned. Don't you ever call me that again? Her voice cracked in two. I'm filing for divorce. The words seemed to drain the air from the room, but she didn't retract them. A sob shook her frame, and I placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. My own tears blurred my sight, but I kept my gaze fixed on the two shattered figures in front of us. We both are, I said quietly. It's over. Erin's scream ripped through the silence, primal, animalistic. She crumpled to the floor, clutching herself as if the pain were physical. Aaron slid down the wall beside her, one hand covering his face. Oh, God, he whispered, maybe for the first time truly understanding what he'd done. We stood there, wordless, watching them unravel. It wasn't triumph. It felt like delivering a sentence we never wanted to pass. My rage had burned away, leaving nothing but hollow ache where love used to live. When I finally spoke, my voice came rough but steady. Here's what happens now. Tomorrow morning, if not sooner, Sophie and I will contact lawyers. We're filing for divorce on grounds of adultery. There's more than enough evidence. I gestured toward the journal lying on the table, the record of every betrayal. Our focus is on what matters most now, protecting the kids. The moment someone uttered the word children, Erin's head jerked upward. Black streaks of mascara cut down her cheeks, her eyes raw and swollen from hours of weeping. The kids! Her voice cracked, barely audible, like the thought had only just landed. Elias, please, don't take them away from me. Bitterness surged through me like acid. Why? Afraid you'll betray them too? The accusation tore out of me before I could rein it in, sharp enough to cut us both. Instant regret burned in my chest. This wasn't about them. This was about her and me. But the wound was still open, bleeding. Erin shook her head violently, strands of hair sticking to her wet face. I love them more than anything, Elias. More than my own life. I was a horrible wife. God, I know that. But I've never failed them as a mother. Don't punish them for me. My lungs tightened as I forced out a breath. You'll always be their mom, I said, voice low, measured. But I won't lie to you. I'm going to fight for primary custody. I hesitated when I saw the terror in her expression, softening just slightly. I'm not erasing you from their lives. That would break them. This isn't about revenge. It's about protecting them. Her head dipped, tears sliding down her chin. Thank you, she whispered, wrecked and small. Across the room, Aaron finally raised his eyes, glancing toward Sophie. His face carried something that looked almost like shame. And, what about us? His words were tentative, brittle. I mean, custody of the dogs or... He stopped, realizing how ridiculous it sounded in that moment. Sophie let out a hollow laugh that held no humor. I'll keep the dogs. You've proven you can't even take care of yourself, let alone them. Aaron nodded weakly, offering no defense. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. I checked my watch. 15 minutes had crawled by, though it felt like a lifetime in hell. We should go, I muttered to Sophie. She gave a small nod, wiping trembling hands across her tear-streaked face. As we stepped toward the door, Erin suddenly lunged forward on her knees. Elias! She cried, voice raw and shredded. I froze, my hand gripping the doorknob. I didn't turn around. I'm sorry, she choked out, barely holding herself together. I know it doesn't matter now, but I am. If I could take it all back, I would. But you can't, I murmured, still facing the door. A single tear slipped free, hot against my cheek. Goodbye, Aaron. I twisted the knob and walked out with Sophie into the cool night. Behind us, Aaron's sobs echoed through the house, mingled with Aaron's low murmur as he tried to comfort her, maybe the first time he'd dared to touch her in front of us. Their grief trailed us as I shut the door behind me. Outside, Sophie broke completely. She collapsed into tears, burying her face in her hands. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steadying her as best I could, and led her to the truck. We sat in silence for what felt like ages, the cab thick with adrenaline and heartbreak. Through the windshield, I could still see their silhouettes framed in the living room window, Aaron clinging to Aaron, both of them destroyed. It was betrayal captured in one frozen image. I turned the key in the ignition. Let's get out of here, I said quietly. Sophie nodded, fumbling for her seatbelt. As I pulled away from the curb, she suddenly screamed. A guttural, primal sound ripped straight from her chest. It startled me, but I understood it. The same scream clawed at my throat. So I let it out. Checking the empty street, I roared, slamming my fist against the steering wheel. It fixed nothing, but for a moment, the rage inside me loosened its grip. Minutes later, I parked near where her car was waiting. I refused to let her drive alone, insisted I follow her to her parents' place to be sure she got there safely. After a moment, she agreed. On the drive, Sophie called her mom. Through gasping sobs, she explained everything, Aaron's affair, the implosion of our lives, and begged her parents to take the kids for the night. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the clock read past 9. The house was silent, dark. Erin wasn't there. She'd likely gone to her parents' or her sister Sophie's. Good. I had nothing left in me for another confrontation. The kids were asleep upstairs, blissfully unaware their world had shattered hours earlier. I lingered in their doorways, watching their peaceful breathing under the soft glow of nightlights. Quietly, I swore to shield them from as much pain as I could. When I finally collapsed in the guest bed, I sent a single text to my dad. I'll explain tomorrow. Everything blew up. His reply came back fast. I love you. Staring at the ceiling, I felt hollow, empty. The worst day of my life was over, but at least I'd faced it head on. Somewhere in the early hours, exhaustion dragged me under into a dreamless sleep. One chapter of my life had ended. The next, uncertain, unsteady, was only beginning. Chapter 4. Fallout and Rebuilding. The days and weeks after blurred into one long smear of pain, paperwork, lawyers, and conversations no one ever wants to have. Sophie and I followed through on what we said we would do. The divorce filings went in immediately. Even though our cases were legally separate, they unfolded in near-perfect parallel. Two separate tracks reflecting the tangled symmetry of how our marriages had unraveled in the first place. Erin moved in with her younger sister Sophie for the time being. To her credit, she respected my request to keep her distance. Our communication was strictly limited to the essentials, mostly the children and legal arrangements. At one point, she sent me a long, carefully worded email, likely because she knew I wouldn't sit across from her and hear her out. I read it late at night, my chest tight with conflicting emotions, and chose not to reply. By then, there was nothing left to say. Any apology felt hollow. We told the kids about the divorce exactly the way the therapist instructed. In her office, calm voices, rehearsed wording. The explanation was simple. We both loved them. We simply wouldn't live together anymore because we had grown apart. It's a surreal thing, staring into your children's eyes while deliberately softening the truth. Every instinct screamed to say, your mom's choices broke this family, but they were far too young to bear that truth. Maybe someday, if they ask, I'll tell them. For now, sparing their image of her mattered more than feeding my anger. Even with all our efforts to shield them, kids notice more than you think. Blake, 9 years old and sharper than most adults, turned furious with Erin for a while. He refused to visit her on some of her scheduled days, likely catching fragments of conversations or picking up cues we thought we'd concealed. I had to remind him gently not to blame her, not to doubt that she loved him. Balancing honesty with preserving their relationship was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Chloe, at 7, mostly cried. Over and over, she asked if we were angry with each other, if the divorce meant we didn't love her anymore. She clung to me constantly in those first weeks, and clung to Erin too. We kept repeating the same reassurances. You'll still see both of us. We both love you. That will never change. Eventually she accepted it, though she grew more anxious about sudden changes in routine. As for Erin, I cut him out of my life completely, like excising an infection. We didn't speak, except through attorneys. I stayed away from any place I thought he might be. He didn't make much effort either. Sophie told me during our late-night calls that he'd spiraled into depression after everything came out. He begged her for another chance at first, but when she refused, he stopped trying. He moved out, staying with a cousin in Ogden while they listed the house for sale. Sophie couldn't stomach living in those rooms anymore. They were poisoned by betrayal. Our church community and neighborhood friends were stunned. At first, neither of us gave details, just said we were divorcing. But small towns have a way of piecing stories together. I suspect one of Sophie's kids overheard something and passed it along. Soon, whispers about Erin and Erin's affair were everywhere. By the time I confided in one close friend, he already knew. The fallout revealed a lot. A few so-called friends drifted away, uncomfortable with the mess. One couple even suggested I forgive Erin for the kids' sake. After I politely told them to stay out of it, they disappeared from our lives. But most people rallied around me and Sophie. As far as I know, Erin and Erin kept their heads down, avoiding social gatherings entirely to escape the judgment they knew awaited them. Roughly a month after everything blew apart, Erin called me sobbing, one of the rare emotional conversations we ever had. She confessed that 2 of her closest friends had cut her off, saying they felt betrayed too. For a brief moment, I almost pitied her. She hadn't only destroyed my life, she had shattered her own. The legal process itself went smoother than I expected. Erin hardly contested anything. maybe out of guilt. She signed the agreements my lawyer prepared with barely a word of resistance. I kept the house, refinancing to buy out her share. We agreed that I would have primary custody of the kids. She would see them every other weekend and one weeknight for dinner. Utah's no-fault divorce laws default to joint custody, but Erin didn't push for more. She knew the kids' lives were rooted here with me, in the only home they'd ever known. Whether her decisions came from remorse or pure exhaustion, I'll never know. Financially, we were on even ground. She had just been fast-tracked for partnership at her firm when everything exploded. Ironically, she stepped back from that promotion, probably from the stress. We waived alimony. Splitting assets was simple, there was no prenup, but mediation resolved things quietly. She even conceded a little more to keep the affair from becoming public record. 4 months after filing, it was over. In the judge's chambers, I listened as he declared the marriage dissolved. Relief washed over me, tangled with grief and disbelief. Erin dabbed her eyes with a tissue and gave me a faint, sad smile, a silent acknowledgement that she knew why this had to end. I nodded politely and walked out without saying a word. It struck me as I left. This was the last major moment we would ever share as a family. Sophie's divorce dragged on longer, mostly because of property sales. Erin initially tried to win her back, then turned bitter when she wouldn't budge. He fought briefly over money, but had no leverage. They had no children, and Sophie's family could afford better lawyers. In the end, he signed the papers, leaving his mark on the final page. Sophie later mentioned that he'd moved to Seattle, determined to start fresh. Good riddance, I thought at the time. In the midst of that storm, Sophie and I found ourselves becoming each other's anchor. At first, what we shared was nothing more than friendship, born from the wreckage, two people holding on to the only person who understood the weight of the pain. Most nights, once the kids were asleep, we'd call. Sometimes the conversations lasted for hours, venting frustrations, trading fears, letting out exhaustion we couldn't admit to anyone else. There were nights when anger burned through us. She would rage about finding Erin's second phone stashed in a sock drawer or the jewelry receipt that proved he'd bought Erin a necklace. Other nights, one of us would simply cry while the other whispered promises that somehow we'd get through it. We leaned on each other in practical ways, too. When parenting alone became overwhelming, we stepped in for one another. The day I had to clear out Erin's remaining belongings, Sophie took all the kids, hers and mine, to the zoo so I could finish in peace. Months later, when her sister's illness forced her to care for her nephews while juggling lawyers and realtors, I hosted every child for an afternoon playdate so she could handle it without worry. Little by little, our lives began to overlap. It felt almost inevitable. Two single parents with history, weathering storms that mirrored each other's. Still, we were cautious, both unwilling to rush into anything beyond friendship. That caution lasted about 6 months after the confrontation, once the divorces were final and the dust had settled, when something between us shifted. One evening, we took my kids and her sister's 3 boys out for pizza and mini-golf. For the first time in years, I felt lighthearted. I even caught myself laughing, real, unrestrained laughter. I watched Sophie cheer when my son scored a hole-in-one, then kneel beside my daughter, patiently showing her how to hold the putter. Something stirred in me then, a warmth I thought had been buried with my marriage. Later, after all 5 kids were asleep, her nephews sprawled across sleeping bags beside Blake and Chloe, we ended up on my back porch. Drinks in hand, we sat beneath a warm summer sky, crickets singing in the dark. The silence between us felt easy, comfortable, but charged with something unspoken. After a long pause, she sighed softly. "Can you believe this? A year ago, would you ever have pictured us here?" "I think about that a lot," I admitted. Back then, if someone had told me what was coming, I'd have thought they were crazy. She turned toward me, her eyes steady. "Do you regret knowing?" she asked quietly. "Would it have been easier if we'd stayed in the dark?" I considered it carefully. "Maybe it would have been easier at first," I said slowly. "But living a lie? No, I can't regret the truth. What about you? I asked. She shook her head, the moonlight catching in her eyes. No, I hate what happened, but I'm glad I know. Even with the sadness, I feel lighter, free even. I realized I felt the same. The betrayal had broken me, yes, but the marriage had been fractured long before that. Outside of it, I was finally learning how to breathe again. We set our drinks aside. A soft breeze swept across the porch, brushing a loose strand of hair across her cheek. Without thinking, I reached up and tucked it behind her ear. It was a gesture I'd done countless times for Erin, but with Sophie, it felt completely different. She held my gaze, and for the first time I noticed how striking her green eyes were. The world seemed to slow. I leaned in slightly, leaving her space to pull away. She didn't. Instead, she closed the gap, and our lips met, tentative, soft, achingly human. Warmth surged through me, mingling with something heavier, something unnamed. We broke apart, startled but not regretful. "I'm sorry," I murmured. She placed a finger gently over my lips. "Don't be," she whispered. "I liked it." "So did I admitted. We didn't rush into anything more. Instead, we sat there, hands intertwined, two people starved for trust and tenderness, rediscovering both in each other. That kiss wasn't just born from shared pain. It was something neither of us expected. A spark, a glimpse of happiness we thought was impossible. We promised to move slowly, for our kids and for ourselves. Family outings continued without labels, though the bond quietly deepened. What grew between us wasn't nostalgia or some idealized love story. It was new, real. I admired her patience, her resilience, the way she could coax uncontrollable giggles from my daughter with nothing more than a silly dance. Later, she admitted she'd fallen for how I never badmouthed Erin in front of the kids, how I put fatherhood ahead of bitterness. About a year after the divorces, we finally called it what it was: dating. Cautiously, intentionally, dinners for two, a concert now and then, quiet moments carved out of chaotic lives. The chemistry was undeniable, but so was the ease. This wasn't high school infatuation or some pedestal-bound love. This was two adults with scars, choosing to heal side by side. The first night we crossed the threshold from friendship into something more left me reeling in ways I couldn't have foreseen. When it was over, she wept, not from regret, but with the quiet relief of someone finally able to let go of years of tension. I wrapped my arms around her, overwhelmed by gratitude that life, after all its detours and damage, had somehow led me back to this kind of closeness. What surprised us most were the children. They adapted to our new reality with a kind of effortless grace neither of us dared hope for. They'd already spent so much of their lives together that our shift felt less like a rupture and more like something that had always been waiting to happen. When Sophie and I gently sat them down to explain, the responses were a spectrum. From my son grinning and saying, "Finally," to my daughter spinning in place, thrilled that Aunt Sophie would be part of every day. Even Sophie's nephews joined in the teasing, joking about whether they should start calling me Uncle Elias, which left her half laughing, half blushing. We were most nervous about Erin, and to a far lesser degree, Erin. But nearly 2 years had passed since everything imploded, and Erin had built a new life of her own. She was dating a former law school classmate, a kind man by all accounts. When I finally told her about Sophie and me, she listened, quiet and composed, before saying simply, "I'm glad for you. You deserve to be happy." There was a flicker of something in her eyes, pain maybe, but it passed quickly. She no longer had any claim on me, nor I on her. As for Erin, I couldn't summon the energy to care what he thought. Word reached us that he was furious, ranting that we must have been together all along. The nerve. Sophie hung up on him mid-accusation, laughing afterward, and that was the last we ever heard of him. A year and a half later, hiking the foothills above the valley, I asked Sophie to marry me. No audience, no spectacle, just the open sky, the wind in the trees, and a pair of deer watching from the edge of the clearing. I told her I had once believed trust and love were permanently out of reach, and that she had proven me wrong. We both cried. The ring barely slid over her swollen fingers from the climb, but in that imperfect moment, everything felt exactly right. The following summer, we wed beneath the sprawling oak tree in my parents' backyard, the same one I'd climbed as a boy. We invited only family and the closest of friends, the ones who had walked with us through the worst of it. Sophie wore a simple ivory dress, radiant in a way that needed no embellishment. When I said I do, I had never been more certain of anything in my life. Our children stood with us as we spoke our vows. Blake, my son, served proudly as best man, smiling wide in every photo despite the tooth he'd lost that very morning. Chloe and Sophie's niece scattered rose petals with solemn precision, taking their role as flower girls far more seriously than anyone expected. When the officiant declared us husband and wife, it felt as though the entire backyard exhaled at once. Tears flowed freely, not from sadness, but from the hard-earned joy of seeing us arrive, finally, at this moment. My mother sobbed quietly through the ceremony, and even Sophie's gruff rancher father pulled us into an uncharacteristically tender embrace afterward. Instead of a formal reception, we celebrated with a backyard barbecue. Old habits die hard, and in this case, we didn't mind. Midway through the toasts, Blake surprised us by asking to speak. In a voice small but steady, he said, "I'm just so happy. I used to be scared when everything went bad, but now our family's even bigger, and it's the best." Sophie and I nearly fell apart right there, hugging him as everyone cheered. Years have passed since that day, and I still marvel at where life has led us. It was never a fairy tale. The scars didn't disappear, they simply softened. We had to rebuild trust brick by brick. Small moments, like a late meeting or a clipped tone in a text, could still stir old fears. Therapy, both together and apart, gave us the tools to navigate it. We chose not to punish each other for wounds neither of us inflicted. In time, the shadow of the affair faded. Erin eventually married her law school friend, and they had a child together. Our co-parenting relationship, once strained, settled into something surprisingly functional, even cordial. We attend birthdays and school events without friction now. She and Sophie will never be close, but they've reached a quiet civility. The kids, hers, mine, and in every meaningful way, ours, have grown into remarkable young adults despite their rocky beginning. Erin faded into the background entirely. Neither Sophie nor I have heard from him in years. Last I heard, he drifted between jobs and short-lived relationships, even skipping his own son's college graduation. It's no longer my concern. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Sophie and I reflect on the strange, winding road that led us here. On one anniversary of the confrontation, she told me softly, "There was a time I wished I'd never met either of you, Erin or Erin. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't have these kids. So I can't regret it anymore." Her words struck something deep in me, the acknowledgement that beauty had grown out of wreckage. I'd be lying if I said I never feel echoes of the past. Every so often, an old photo surfaces, like that trip to Lake Powell, where we were all smiles and sunscreen, oblivious to what was unraveling beneath the surface. But those pangs fade quickly when I see the life we've built. I see Sophie on the porch of our home, passing out glasses of lemonade to our children as they tear across the lawn. The youngest clings to her leg, laughing, while the older ones chase each other through the grass. In those moments, I remember. I survived the worst heartbreak of my life, and from its wreckage, I built something stronger, something lasting. If there's one truth I've carried from it all, it's this. Life's sharpest turns are often the ones that carve us into who we're meant to be. The day I opened that journal, I thought my world had ended. But in hindsight, it was only the beginning, the chaotic, painful start of something far more beautiful than I ever imagined possible. Treachery once tore me apart, splintering everything I thought I was. But love, undeserved, steadfast, and impossibly pure, stitched me back together piece by piece. I stand here now, weathered by conflicts I never sought, scarred yet calm, finally whole. The journal that once captured my bleakest nights rests in the attic, hidden under layers of forgotten years. I almost never reach for it anymore. Its purpose has shifted, It serves only as a marker of the road I've traveled and the principles that carried me through. Truth, faithfulness, and the rare people who live by both. As the sun dissolves into the quiet haze of a Utah dusk, I squeeze Sophie's hand and meet her eyes. Silence says everything we need to hear. The past was ruthless, but the present feels nothing short of miraculous. We endured every storm side by side, and whatever tempests await us, we'll weather them the same way, together.